So I'm Jill Hamilton, and I get to moderate this next panel. It's called Leadership Through Chaos. And while we're getting set up here, it'd be great to just take a second and just jot down, maybe thinking through one of your biggest challenges in leading through chaos. I mean, it's a great year for that. And so anything that's rising to the top as you think through, what is that? What is one of your biggest challenges this year? So you guys can sit down. So today we have Colonel Kris Saling. She is an Army officer and author of Data-Driven Talent Management. And for nearly a decade, Kris has integrated AI and data into Army HR decisions, leading experimental teams that tackle people analytics, talent management, soldier experience. She partners with both industry and academia. And I saw on LinkedIn, you jokingly refer to yourself as the Nick Fury for your HR Avengers.
Yes, I put together teams of superheroes. I do not myself have any superpowers.
That is a superpower. And I also know that your views here are your own and not of the federal government, the department that you are in.
The department formerly known as the Department of Defense.
Correct.
In the building that we're just calling the Shape now, and we're just going to rename everything.
Right. It's the Pentagon, yeah. And then we have Steve Gaffney here as well. He's president and CEO of the Steve Gaffney Company, leading expert on creating consistently high-achieving organizations. For nearly 30 years, Steve has advised government, military, Fortune 500 leaders on communication, change leadership, building high-achieving teams. He's a cancer survivor, an accomplished author, and his latest book is Unconditional Power. So, and you can check out more for him at justbehonest.com. So, all that, we're going to kick off to the biggest question here, which is just the title of this whole session, just to kick it off, is how do you lead through chaos? And I'll let you guys jump ball or whatever.
No rock, paper, scissors. All right. I've been voluntold as tribute. I'm in the Army. I'm used to that. No, if you want to test yourself as a leader, if you wanted to test yourself as a leader and how you do with leading through ambiguity, the past 8 months have been a pretty interesting crucible. And I think everybody has seen that no matter where you work. If you work anywhere affiliated with any laws, regulations, or statutes that touch business. Oh, wait, that's everybody. So we've all seen the chaos and the upheaval. But I think the best way I can frame how you lead through chaos is by poking at something that absolutely fails every single time. And it's our impulse as leaders to introduce certainty. We see it all the time with AI, and we've heard a lot of these discussions. AI is going to take our jobs. AI is not going to take your jobs. AI is going to replace this work. AI is not going to replace this work. AI is continuing to do this. It's doing that, and it's never going to be able to do X. We kind of get that same thing with looking at where the government's going to go. Okay, these jobs are safe. This is going to go, oh, we just reorganized. These jobs are going to get a little, oh, we're hiring you back. We've seen a lot of these things imposed on folks, but as a leader, that's kind of the worst thing you can do. Because you're instilling false certainty. You're instilling an expectation in people that you can't guarantee. You're not in control of it. So the best thing that we've been doing, or we've tried to do, is this is a situation we know now. This is the ground truth. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Here's our aim point. Our mission set remains largely the same. Here are our priorities. Here are our values. Reinforce those and set up routine and regular touch points so that people do have the certainty of knowing when they are going to hear from you as a leader and what's going on. I mean, just one more quick thing, and then I'll turn over the floor. I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but I do think about this a lot. We see this a lot in crisis communication. I cut my teeth on crisis management, working in the Indo-Pacific region on humanitarian aid and disaster relief, and that was very important. We couldn't necessarily guarantee when help was coming, what type of help was coming, what type of services were going to be where, but we did instill a routine in terms of touch points when we could tell people when we were going to update them. And that at least provided a starting anchor for people to say, all right, I have at least one thing I know with certainty. Here's when I'm going to know what's happening.
So actually, it's interesting what you're, is this on? All right. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Also, when you were just saying, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, I remember one of my clients, I've done work in the community for about 30 years now and hit a lot of the different branches of the government, and of course worked with all the defense contractors, Mantech, Leidos, SAIC, all this stuff. And I do a lot of work in your community. It reminds me of what a client of mine said. Number one strategy about chaos: don't make things up. How often have you just heard in your job where people are just making up stuff and it turns out later it's not the case? So it is tempting and people get drawn into the drama, but we'll talk about mistakes, but all that is a factor. But I want to give you the number one most important strategy I've experienced in leading through chaos and actually leading, period. And that is to instill honest communication. But what I mean by honest communication is not about truth or ethics. The biggest problem in life, and definitely within organizations, and we're seeing this now, is not what people say, it's what they don't say. How often have you thought to yourself, if they had just told me, I could have done a lot better job? Now, this sounds kind of very simple, but how often have you ever experienced somebody who said, oh, you know what, you can tell me anything, I want to hear the truth. You know, I love honest feedback. And so you give them honest feedback and they flip out. You ever have anybody have that at home happening? Anyway, so the challenge is actually people train and condition people to lie to them because of their reaction. And so we really have to look at this, but when you're leading through chaos, the most important thing is this two-way channel of communication, and that has everything to do, and if you forget everything out of what I'm going to say at least, the most important thing is this: the biggest problem is not what people say, it's what they don't say to each other. So the key is, how do you get the unsaid said? How do you get the unsaid said? And we can talk more obviously about that and strategies accordingly.
Yeah, because sometimes even in the chaos, when you look at this year, there's so much that we don't know, like so much that you would think was not going to happen, but then here we are. So just interesting. So that's the second thing to think through is, what would you say is the biggest mistake? And you both kind of touched on this in different ways, but what's the biggest mistake in leading through chaos that either you've personally experienced or you've seen? Because that's the thing. You're either in that leadership role yourself, or sometimes you're leading up to help support, or there's a desire to move into that. So it touches everybody, whether you're experiencing somebody's mistakes or you're the one making them, What's in that?
So I think we touched on it a little bit, but one of the things I see people doing that backfires as much as trying to introduce certainty, I think is probably under the larger umbrella of controlling things that are out of your control. I mean, I think everybody's so desperate to take hold of the situation that when you see chaos happening, when you see ambiguity, you forget the things that you can actually impact and the things that you're actually responsible for. I mean, we see that a lot when it comes to communication. I think communication is going to be a running theme through this chat. As we're looking at different events, I have to caution a lot of our folks, a lot of our senior leaders, on what actually they should be commenting on and taking control of. Because they're things that they can't impact. They're things they can't promise. And a lot of times they feel compelled, again, kind of to create that certainty, to come and talk about and have a viewpoint and to make a statement, which is typically a mistake if it's not in your domain, if it's not something that you can speak to. So control what you can control, speak to what you know. And I love your point about getting the unspoken spoken. And I would love to hear more about how you do that, but I'll let you answer your part of the question.
Well, we can definitely get into that. So the biggest mistake, I think, is, besides people making up stuff, I mean, again, kind of piggybacking off what you just said, is focusing on things you can't control. I mean, just look at your day when people get caught up in the news and drama and politics. And bottom line is, we eat up our day by things that we have no control over. But so that gets to what you can do, is focus 100% on what you can control. And really look, we'll talk about meetings, but people just waste so much time. And I'll give you an example of how people waste time in meetings. How many of you have been in a meeting in which the subject of the meeting is about what somebody else is thinking who's not in the meeting. And you're like, we're just guessing here. Why are we wasting our time? Somebody leave, go ask that person, and then we can come back. So again, you might say, well, I'm not always in charge. And I agree with that. It just depends on your job title, but it comes back to focusing really on what we can control. Because let's face it, the job is hard. And what you all do, and I just want to say this because I forgot to say this earlier, is critically important. For all of you with the clearances and related industries, you just have, your friends don't even know all the work you do and how you're protecting this country. And no matter what we're saying, and no matter how crazy things are, we can never forget this is the best country in the world. And you're there to protect us. I don't have a clearance, so I don't get to know all the stuff. But I have had the privilege of working with people like you that are saving and protecting our country. And that's so important, which goes back to something else. Also focusing really on the big picture. Keep the end in sight. What are we trying to achieve here? And don't allow yourself to get distracted by things that are just way off the mark and you have no control over.
That's great. I didn't warn you all that we were going to stop at different points for any audience questions as we kind of move along, because sometimes I know when I get to the end, I completely forget what I maybe wanted to ask about in the very beginning. So just pausing here, one, if anybody wanted to share anything they might have jotted down, like a different challenge you're facing that would be helpful to have some input on, or even a specific question from what you've heard so far from either Kris or Steve that you'd love to have answered.
They're still letting the coffee absorb.
That's right. I'm still waking up myself. Okay.
Can I just say something? Listen, we've all been on big groups, and it's kind of like, well, my challenge, do I want to share it? Do I not? Do I want to share it? Do I not? But here's the thing. If you share it, we can offer particular advice and be targeted. So we're not just talking about concepts, about what's going on in your life. And so I'll just give you an example of just getting the unsaid said and how important this is. You know, I was doing a session in Philadelphia, and this lady came up to me, and she was talking about her job and stresses she was having. And I said, well, do you think you're doing a great job? And she said, yeah. And I said, why don't you go ask your boss whether you think you're doing a great job? And she started to get teary-eyed. And I said to her, what's going on? And of course, you can probably see this. She was afraid that if she asked that question, what would be the answer? But of course, my comeback is, when's a good time to find this out? The most important questions to ask are the questions that you're afraid to ask. So if you're sitting on something, you're like, should I bring it up or should I not? I'd love to hear it. And of course, you can always contact me afterwards or contact us afterwards. But it's what you're experiencing, probably others are experiencing, and then we can tailor what we're talking to you.
No, I think that's an excellent point. Just because we've had so much overlap in our experiences, there's likely a lot out there that you have, and we've got a question. Yay.
Yeah, I've seen on both the candidate side and employee side an uptick in fear that seems to be manifesting as anger. Responses from candidates when we let them know we're moving on, that they won't be moving forward in the process, or things that are outside of our control, like, job loss on the government contract side. And so I'm not sure if that's, something that other people have been experiencing. And I think that sort of falls solidly into the chaos.
No, I think that is a observation we see everywhere, because right now we're all in a period of heightened emotions. Mm-hmm. This type of ambiguity, it threatens all of our basics in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our ability to go get work and to do good work and to have certainty of work impacts our ability to meet those most basic human necessities, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our family. And the more that gets jeopardized, the more people are going to react to events that might be less significant in a more stable time. But now it's the straw that broke the camel's back. So I think one of the things that we have to do as we're working through all these things is expect the unexpected. Now, it sounds trite, but at the same time, people are going to blow up at things that they don't typically blow up at. They're going to get saddened by things they don't typically get saddened by. You have to give yourself the space to take a step back and realize that you might just be that last little inch on the fuse before the bomb goes off. It's probably nothing to do with you and the way you're doing business, but that's something too. Go get a second opinion. Go talk with somebody trusted in your organization. Hey, did I handle this correctly? Is there something I can do better on this, because there might be ways that you can mitigate some of it, but at the same time do that to get that constructive feedback, but give yourself the distance back to realize it might not be you at all.
It's interesting that you brought up fear and anger because they're very tied together. So let me give you something that was a huge breakthrough in my life when I learned this some years ago. Anger is a secondary emotion. There are two primary causes of anger: hurt feelings and fear. So it's interesting that it's tied because people get angry. And those of you who are parents know exactly what I'm talking about. If your child is crossing the street, you wouldn't say, I would appreciate it if you would look both ways. You're like, get out of the road, right? Because we get afraid. So a lot of anger is sourced back to that. So it's interesting that you bring this up, but let me just share what I think needs to happen more in the industry around recruitment and also, and what I'm about to say, I'm not an HR professional and I'm not a lawyer. So I'm just saying from the outside, and that is tell people the truth why they're not getting the job. Let me just share with you a quick story. Defense Logistics Agency has been a big client of mine over the years. And I did a project in which the project was to coach people who did not get promoted. And so the first call I would get, obviously, they were stressed and they were upset. And I said, well, let me coach you and help you through this. They said, great. I said, do you know why you didn't get the job, the promotion? 100% of the people did not know. They received vague, not tactical advice. It was like, well, more communication or more experience. They're just not telling the truth. So I know I'm not a lawyer and I know I'm not an HR professional like yourself and involved in stuff. But here's what I want to say. Wherever you can, tell people the truth. So if they didn't get the job, do a favor for that candidate and tell them, look, you may not like what I'm about to say, but I want to let you know your resume was this, or you answered this incorrectly. Whatever you can do, because in life, again, what worries us is not the part that we know. What keeps us interesting up at night, if I was asked that question, I would say, what I don't know. Let's face it, what worries us is what we don't know about our family, what we don't know about our friends, what we don't know about work. That's what we can do. So the best we can do is give people the tactical advice. They may get mad, but they overall will appreciate it because we respect people who tell the truth.
I want to add something too, because I'm seeing another thread, Steve, in the conversation that we're having here, and that is coming back for clarification. That's one of the things that we can do and we can encourage people to do. We kind of joke about this in some of the offices I've been in. We call it commander-splaining. It's that person who's not in the room. Hey, what the boss actually meant was this. So this is what we need to, okay, will you go tell the boss, hey, sir, what you actually meant was? That's not always a great thing to do, but I've usually been the voluntold distributor again to go back and say, hey, boss, we've got a little bit of confusion about what exactly it is you're asking. Here's what we think you mean. Can we get a yay or nay? Like this is before we put a whole lot of effort into this, because the best time to get that clarification is before you have been running full force off in the wrong direction. And we did that with a couple of different operational approaches. We were trying to figure out a new retention strategy for officers. And we thought he had meant do these three things. Let's look at different incentives. Let's look at bonuses. Let's look at that. He didn't want any of that at all. All he wanted was a roadmap to actually create some focus groups, create some surveys, and figure out what people wanted. I mean, mind blown there. That's kind of what we need to do is figure out what people actually want before we come up with a whole retention strategy. But still, before we go full force into some of those things, coming back and saying, is this what you actually meant? And I kind of pull that back into the hiring channels also. A lot of people will just sit there and say, okay, well, this sucks. They didn't hire me. Okay, I'm going on to the next one. Give people the opportunity to come back and say, hey, why not me? Okay, here are these 1, 2, 3 bullet points that you might be able to improve on. Don't have to give them everything, but just give them a couple things to work on.
And I think that's great. I think especially with the anger feeling. I don't know how many of you live in the DC metro area. I've lived here for like 21 years, and it's always been a lot of traffic. But this year, especially on the Beltway, I've just been like, wow, things are tense. People are very uptight, and there's just, because you're right, there's job loss, there's all that fear, there's so many different emotions happening right now, and you can almost sometimes feel it. I mean, it's always been there a little bit on the Beltway, or a lot, but it feels more amplified this year. But even out at different events, to what you're saying, I run into a lot of candidates who it's that the hopelessness. I've fired off all of these resumes. I've submitted application after application. Nothing's coming back. Because they're almost like bewildered at the state of, they feel like a lack of jobs, even though there's still a lot of jobs out there, but they're like, my skill set or my clearance level isn't really needed anymore. And so then it's a frustration in the process. You hear a lot of them online sounding off. I've sent out 150 submissions this year, and crickets, I don't hear anything. I'm like, well, did you make sure you matched completely to that? So there's a lot of different reasons for it, but it's hard to answer, I think, even all of those different people who are angry or frustrated because just the massive amount that you're facing of coming in, all the submissions for you guys.
I want to tap into one of the things you said, Jill, about those conversations and about some of that anger and that frustration. And also a little bit in some of the previous conversations about AI, because that's another place where you need to be absolutely honest with people on what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. A lot of our employers, a lot of people we work for are going to come in and say, I need AI skills. Okay, what type? Do you need developers? Do you need data scientists? Do you need people who just spell AI and kind of know vaguely what it does? We need those AI orchestrators. That's my new favorite term because I figured out now what it is I actually do. Like what is it that we actually need? Well, you didn't have any AI skills in your resume. Well, did we go back for clarification and say what kind of skills do we actually want? Or is this just we think what the greatest buzzword is going to be to get the most qualified technical candidates into the pool? And that's a place too where it also helps to go to clarification for some of the folks who work in this space. Because a lot of times I'll have leaders, Army senior leaders say, we need more AI talent. And I'll have to go back to them and go, okay, what kind? Because there's lots of different people working in this space. You saw that skill that people are looking for. And right now with just since the explosion of generative AI that's easily accessible through chat, not even low code or no code, it's just you can chat with AI and get it to generate for you solutions in the coding, solutions in the materials space, image, just whatever. Mm-hmm. Since that explosion, what is it that we actually need for folks? Back end, front end, familiarization, training, and then be honest with folks about the skills that they need to come in with.
Yeah, and I just want to build from that and say, people aren't even clear what AI means or generative AI. And so just ask them what they mean. People just throw around terms, AI agents, all kinds of stuff. And there's different interpretations. So I love your point about clarification. The other thing I also want to say is another tactical thing you can do is just see how people are doing. There's just nothing wrong with just reaching out and saying, hey, how you doing? How are your spirits? You okay? And it's in times like this that is really about, that's why I love this theme, Connect 2025. In fact, a big takeaway is just to connect with people. And let me just say something when you don't know what to say. So I went through cancer in 2009. I'm completely fine, but I was astonished that some people who I thought would call didn't call, and then other people who I thought would call, anyway, you get the point. Didn't call, would call, didn't call, whatever. But here's what I realized. When people don't know what to say, they don't say anything. And that's a problem. Remember getting the unsaid said. So what can you do? This is, you can do it at work and you can do it at home. Somebody's going through a difficult time, you call them up and you just say, or at work and just say, how you doing? I don't have anything great to say to you. I don't have any particular advice, but I just want to see how you're doing. Or you can say, if somebody's going through a really tough time, you just say, listen, I just want to call you to let you know I'm thinking of you. Anything I can do to be there for you, just let me know. A friendly voice goes a long way. So I love the theme Connect, because it is all about connection.
Another question out there, right?
So I don't speak very well in crowds, but I do want to tap onto what you just mentioned. And thank you for the Maslow's hierarchy, because we are either rooted in fear or we're rooted in love. And a lot of us in this room are empaths. And so my heart is like beating out of my chest right now because I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrified. But I'm feeling all y'all's energy. So when you all speak about being communicative to the person that did not get the job, at the end of the day, if you're an empath, you have got to remember that energy is not yours. You are not to take it home. You are supposed to give that back to sender. And you don't do it in like, I'm giving you back all your energy. I don't want it. I don't want it. But you cannot take it home. You cannot close your eyes at night and cry because we're talking to hundreds of candidates. And so many of them are not getting those jobs. And we don't want to ghost them because ghosting is like, sorry guys, that's a jerk move. And if you ghost people, you shouldn't be in this line of business. We can't also give them all the details as to why. So we do have to be selective as to why, but communicating effectively and then releasing that energy back out, not taking it home is critical to mental health and emotional health. Does that make sense? And like I said, I'm terrified in talking in front of people, but I hope this tool truly helps because it's so critical for any empath in this room. You cannot take it home with you.
And you're right. I agree with that.
Yeah, you did great.
Because it sucks. I said that really loud. It sucks though, right? And you don't want to lie.
And I wanted to give, and I talked to them recently, I wanted to give them, the real answer. I felt they deserved that. They made it all the way through to the last round. It was the prime contractor interview where they didn't, get chosen. So he was saying, you chose me, right? And I said, we did. We really wanted you to be the one. We don't have the final hiring decision. And, it was also at like 10 o'clock at night, so maybe I shouldn't have been in for the event. But I do take it personally because it was calling my professionalism into question. And, I take pride in putting people in the right position.
So was the communication that you're talking about via email? Yes. Okay, so let me just say something as a whole about connection and email. Email is a horrible form of communication. It just is. So the way human beings interpret messages from each other, over 90% of a message gets communicated other than the words, which means no matter how well we write an email and know how much we're caring and we're doing the right thing, 90% they're making it up. I mean, for example, people use smiley faces. How else could that be interpreted? Right, sarcasm, whatever. So it's really hard. And I'll give you a quick story about this, and then I've got an idea for you on our spirits. I was doing a session, and this lady said, my boss writes rude emails. I said, okay, well, let's talk about it. She goes, well, I ask him questions, and he answers it. I go, okay, so what's the rude part? She goes, he just answers it. He doesn't say, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope you have a great day. Nothing else. Just one line and the answer. So, and then we were doing the session and there's a distinction around fact versus opinion. And it was an eye-opening experience because she realized she was making things up based on that email. And so my rule of thumb in our office, and I've always shared this with people, is if you have a challenging thing to say, don't use email first. Now, you might say, but I have to document. I agree. After the conversation. So it's usually, whenever you can, is to give people kind of feedback because they hear your tone and the caring part and all the great part you just shared. So that's one thing. The other thing is on the mood. So here's the thing. Our mood really matters. And I just finished a book, Unconditional Power. And incidentally, I'm going to give this all to you for free. All you have to do is go to our website, say you said the conference, we'll send you the electronic version. So I don't want you thinking, well, he's up here and he's trying to sell his book. No, I'm going to give it to you. So let me just share with you the main idea out of the book, because I think it could help right now. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a good mood, you're smarter? So our spirits do matter. Our energy does matter. We're do a better job when we're doing that. So now the question is, how do we keep ourselves in good spirits? And how do we get other people to be in good spirits? The book has all these strategies around doing that. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Intentional disruption. When a conversation is going in the wrong direction, there are 3 great questions you can always ask that for the rest of your career, you can redirect any conversation. You don't have to be the leader of a meeting. All you have to do is say, well, what would you suggest? What would you suggest is a great question, right? People sit there, it's so upsetting because we don't know this. Great, it's tough. What would you suggest? Second is, what would it take for you to agree? That's a great question because if you ever propose something and somebody goes, no, I don't agree. Or what would it take for you to agree? What would it take for you to be more considering of what I'm saying, could be? Or what would it take for us to be me in line with a promotion or potentially with a job, whatever the case may be, but what would it take to get that? And the third is, can you live with it? How many of you spent stupid time, just wasted time when it's like watching conversations and this is like a small thing and we're getting we're getting derailed in a meeting, and it's like, can we live with it? So all you have to do is say, hey, I'm just wondering, is this a deal breaker or can we live with it? So what would you suggest? What would it take for you to agree? And can you live with it? Are 3 great questions that for the rest of your career, you can redirect any conversation into a solution-oriented conversation.
That's really good. One quick thought on that before I move to the next question, but if it would be helpful, my content hat just went on with this, like if it would ever be helpful to have like a roadmap for candidates to help with that communication process, because a lot of them come in and they don't realize that you have to get it approved by the prime, or you need the government to approve this person, and you don't have any control. So it's not you personally saying no to them. You've gotten them through all the different rounds. It's outside your control. You can always follow up with me and let me know. I mean, I'm always looking for different, either a news article that we could put out that you can even share with candidates to make it easier for that communication process, because you don't have the time to put that into an email or even have that on your job requisitions or anything like that all the time. Here's what the process is. But if there's a general way you want me to write that for you and put it out and share it out, I would be more than happy to do that. So feel free to follow up with me or send me an email, editor@ClearanceJobs.com, and we can get on that. But so one of the things, thinking through like one key strategy or technique or idea, like a takeaway, kind of setting some of the stage of a lot of the things dealing with this year is you have an influx of candidates who are potentially not as qualified as they think they are for the jobs that you have open for. As a contractor, there's this influx of a lot of federal candidates, or they don't understand that they have a lower clearance and you can't wait around for, them to get a higher clearance. There's a lot of that. There's also, fear of contracts being lost or not sure. It's a lot of shifting things based on the latest executive order or based on, DOGE coming through and cutting contracts. Those are real things that you struggle with. You're trying to plan your workforce and think ahead, and yet everything changes so quickly, whether you're on the government side or whether you're as a contractor. So what would the two of you offer up as, a key strategy, technique, idea, especially in times like this where there's so much uncertainty, but you have to keep your head about you when all around are losing theirs and blaming it on you? How do you do that?
Of course, he's going to follow it up with something brilliant. So, okay.
No,
it's all good. No, that is a terrific question. And the problem is we haven't really figured out the answer. And I think it's okay to say that, that we do not have a proven working strategy for how to lead through ambiguity with organizations that are changing rapidly, because we're still very new at this in the federal government. I mean, I think that's one of the places where that partnership we have with industry can be extremely helpful, where we're putting together more temporary teams, more cross-functional teams, more matrixed organizations, because that really is what we in the federal government are learning how to do. We don't have the luxury of going through these very staid position descriptions anymore and saying, this will be your job forever and ever, amen. That's not how it's going to work. We are going to flex to projects. We are going to flex to whatever the demand signal is. We are going to change and pivot, and we're going to have to learn to adopt Agile. I mean, my organization has been trying to do this for a while. So for us, a little bit of the DOGE running through walls, they're knocking down walls, and we're kind of sitting there going, please don't knock down the whole ceiling. But at the same time, they're knocking down walls that we wanted to knock down for a long time. So now we have the opportunity to go forward and actually try to set up these more flexible teams, term hires, contracted hires, and giving people more ability to move throughout our organization, which a lot of folks have craved. So we're losing the stability, but we're trading it off for a new variety of flexibility. All of that to say is that, chaos is a mixture of crisis and opportunity. Lean into the opportunities, because that will help you ameliorate the crisis.
Yeah, I love what you said. Embrace chaos. Look, it is the way it is, right? So at the beginning, we were saying, chaos is not sustainable. Now I would say it is just the way it is. So there's all kinds of opportunities, right? And so maybe in the absence of stuff, you can seize a moment or take the initiative moving forward. I love your analogy about about breaking down walls. Hopefully they don't break down the ceiling. That's brilliant because there are walls that are being broken down. So now seize the opportunity. That's one thing. So I love that kind of mindset, embracing chaos. On a tactical side, another thing, if you're leading a team, is I would say a very important tactical thing is have daily huddles. Let me just talk about the worst meetings of all. The worst meetings of all are called got a minute meetings. They're never a minute, right? They're never 5 minutes. But you know what the worst part about this is? When we're done with that meeting, nobody else knows what just happened. And so people start to feel out of the loop or whatever. If you want a handout on the 6 most important types of meetings, just go to our website. Again, we'll send it to you. But I want to just highlight one really critical one, and daily huddles. So one of my clients, when COVID hit, they never had a daily huddle, but it was so much going on, so much turmoil during that time period. They actually had a sunset and sunrise and sunset meeting because they had to keep people focused. So one of the things that people tend to do is drop off meetings, but blaming meetings for meetings is the problem is just ridiculous. It's like blaming a car for a car accident. It's not the car's fault, it's who's ever driving it, right? So daily huddles will be really important. 15-minute meeting, just like a headline. Here's what we got. What do other people got? It'll keep people focused. And also, it's a great way to connect with people, too.
That's really great. We have taken you right up to the break, I believe. And so thank you both for your sharing all your wisdom and expertise. And if you have other burning questions, I know they would both probably be delighted to chat with you more. So you're welcome to do that and follow up with them. So, yeah.